Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Blue Line the Podcast, a podcast created for and aimed at all members of law enforcement. I'm Brittani Schroeder, editor of Blue Line magazine. Our special guest today on this episode is Inspector Dawn-Lyn Blake of the Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service in Alberta. We're going to be exploring the topic of police recruitment and focusing on the challenges Indigenous police services face when trying to attract community members to this profession. I'm really excited to dive into this with you, Dawn-Lyn, so thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks for asking.
Of course. Now, since we're going to be talking about recruitment, I want to start off with the story of you and how you found your way into being a police officer.
All right. I guess to begin, I would say that I was a victim of crime at a young age, and I went through the investigational and the court process with a police officer. And after the court process, I began getting into trouble a lot. I grew up on the Six Nations Reserve and off and on and in between Brantford, Ontario as well. And during that 7 to 8 year troubled period of my life, I knew that if I didn't change the trajectory of my life, I wasn't going to have another chapter. So when I had limited options at the time, I started to dig a little bit deep and reflect on who stood out in my life and who made an impact in my life. And a police officer that helped myself and my family through the investigation and the court process, he made a huge impact in my life. And not only for me, but for my family. And ultimately, he made such a difference. He was kind. He was like one of the first kind men that didn't want anything from me or my mom or our family, just kind. And it wasn't until about 10 years after meeting with him or having that experience with him, that it wasn't until about 10 years after that I graduated from the RCMP Training Academy, and I took my graduation photo and I wrote on the back, "Because of you, thank you." And I
Oh,
sent that to him, and he was an OPP officer. Yeah.
that's fantastic. I love the story that someone had an impact on you and it put you on a completely different path. And look where you are now.
Yeah, I definitely owe it to him and many others amongst the way, but definitely to him for starting me out.
So let's talk about police recruitment. I think everyone's talking about this right now because many police services across the country are all looking for new talent. They're all looking for the next person that's going to step into that uniform and serve the community. So since this is top of mind for so many people, I'd love to hear about some of the challenges that you've observed in this area over the past few years, and maybe what challenges may be unique to Indigenous-led services, such as the Tsuut'ina Police Service.
Um, I'd say because the history of policing and Indigenous peoples is not a good story, but it's a story that we have to be willing to listen to, of course, and it's a story across Canada. And I think everybody in their communities are at different stages of growth and trust. I've policed different First Nations communities across Canada when I was with the Mounties. And I think, thinking back even to my own community, I remember telling my grandma and my dad 27 years ago that I was joining the Mounties. And they had said to me, "If you do that, don't ever speak to us again."
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't comprehend that because I was finally doing something good for myself in my life. And I would say some of the challenges that I observed in my own process was that it was a very intimidating industry to get into.
Right.
It was definitely scripted for a certain demographic. And I think that recognizing going forward, I've learned a lot from that, just my own experience and through my own stages of my own career path and the challenges. It's given me the opportunity to reflect back on that and look and see what I would do different, or how I could have made it easier for a female officer that I'm trying to recruit, or a female community member that I'm trying to recruit.
Right. And building right off of that, I'd love to hear about the specific challenges that you've seen or experienced when it comes to getting Indigenous women interested in this profession.
Well, as I said earlier, it can be a very intimidating industry to get into, right? And not a lot of people see themselves in this field at all. But the one thing is that recruiting, I think, community members is key, especially in First Nations communities. They know how to police their community already. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and they were doing it well before our colonial structure came into place.
Mm-hmm.
I think getting Indigenous women into policing, here's why I think that this is a challenge. I think they've been policing their communities forever. They're protectors of their communities. And they're the caregivers, and they're really the glue that keeps us all together. Whether if your mom isn't around anymore, it's your aunties you rely upon, it's
Right.
your cousins you rely upon, it's all of you looking out for each other. And without their input and guidance, you come across as a police officer when you come into the community as just what's best for them. But and who wouldn't turn their back on that style of thinking?
Right.
If I came into your home and I thought that I knew what was best for you and what your family needed without asking. Like, you don't know what's best for my children and my household
Yeah.
or my life. And when you think about community, it's not just where you live, it's how you live. And if you don't uphold the beliefs and traditions and culture and values in my home, then you're not welcome in my home.
Right.
So I think if you want to get women interested in policing, you have to show them all the positions and all the roles that you have within these walls. And you have to be open to changing your policies and procedures and practices. And that's true reconciliation and saying, I welcome you in and take a look, criticize it because it's not perfect. And I think we have to be open to recognizing that we're not perfect
Yeah.
and that's okay. And we don't have it all figured out. We have to get away from thinking that we know what's best for community with this blanket approach, in my opinion.
Now, thinking back to the beginning of your journey, like you said, it was intimidating and there was a specific script for the people they were looking for or the people who would be accepted into, in your case, the RCMP. But this, I feel, goes for many municipal police services as well. So back then, was there anything specifically aimed at women and designed to get them to apply? Was there anything that you felt really resonated with you, or was that something that was lacking?
I would say I think we can be way better for sure. Still, I think we're implementing changes internally to a degree. I do think that when I was at the time that I was attracted to the policing career in 1998, it was that sounds so long ago. When
Don't
I
think
was,
about that.
yeah, right. I would say it's different and we are better. But I will say this is that when I read the articles about women who've lived policing and the challenges that they face while employed, from the bullying, the harassment, the sexual harassment, the unfair opportunities, those are real.
Hmm.
And they're not whining and making it up. It's we have to look at our internal systems continuously and ask ourselves, did we miss the mark? Were we being supportive? How are we taking care of our people? And the common theme seems to be that we have challenges with attraction and retention.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the answer is, but to specifically aim at women and designing our application process to get them to apply, we need to change this image. I remember being in the community and asking the kids what they thought about our police service. And they said, I'm scared of that building. It's just got these big walls and I don't know what goes on
Right.
inside. And I thought, well, why are we not inviting more people here to take a look around, come for tours, come for ride-alongs more, take that whole stigma away. So yeah, but I do think that there's a lot more we could be doing.
Aside from inviting people into the building and doing ride-alongs, what else do you think we can do to change that image so that Indigenous communities are feeling more comfortable with the police that are supposed to be serving them?
Aside from our own application process, I mean, I've got 3 or 4 things I'd modify there for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like it for an example, I'll touch on it briefly, which is we have to ask ourselves, are we still targeting who we want? Like, some steps are essential in our application process for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not implying that we're doing it wrong. I'm just saying we can be better. So
Hmm.
now the application process that's a the application itself is very intimidating. It's important that it's thorough and that it's good and that we have all the details that we need about that person, but it doesn't mean it's not intimidating and people won't need guidance throughout it.
Right.
Our behavioral descriptive interviews that we have, which is our panel structured interview where and I had been in recruiting in the RCMP for quite some time and recruiting here with Tsuut'ina Police Service. And I know that from our behavioral descriptive interviews, sometimes we're really focused on the outcome being the competency, which is leadership. Tell me about a time when, or problem solving. Tell me about a time when.
Hmm.
So we're continuously modifying to get a glimpse of the person's rationale, thought process, decision making, and their ethics, but are we really gaining a good understanding of their lifestyle, values, and what's important to them?
Right.
Like their own moments of impact in that interview. You know, what are the things that shaped them and made them come to policing? Those are things, those are motivators, and those are things I think we want to know. And that I'm sure that could be easily implemented. And I'm sure that there's certainly a lot of police agencies that have more candid interviews. I just think generically, globally, across, well, nationally, we have a strict process in place.
Hmm.
With that, I would say training, 6 months of training for a cadet, what a scary world. I'll be honest, when I reflect back on that, we hired a local girl from Tsuut'ina, sent her away to the RCMP Training Academy in Regina, Saskatchewan
Hmm.
for her 6 months. And because I had been through it too, I was like, you know what, she's going to be just fine. She's going to be good. We're going to touch base with her every now and again. But looking back, aside from checking on her, I can see from her perspective that we kind of went sink or swim.
Right.
Like I really do. I think we could have been way better at looking over her and thinking of 1,000 things we could have done better.
Right.
And if she already didn't have come from a strong family with, and if she didn't already have grit and passion and a strong belief system, we likely would have lost her during training. And yeah, I got to give her a shout out, you know, like Maya Crowchild, she's an amazing community member and she was an amazing cadet and she just soared and she did it without our help.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, but had she not been a strong character, she probably wouldn't have made it through training because we didn't
Yeah.
check.
But
And then
potentially more support through that process then.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then I would say in regards to like what we could be doing different would be the 6 months of field training. When a cadet gets out of training and they're paired up with a field training officer, a lot of the times we'll provide a list of suggested community projects for new cadets on options that they can take because we know what the issues are, we know what the problems are.
Mhm.
So we'll say, you know, out of these 5, here's the problems in this community, here's your targeted, here's your focus. Come up with a project. And then that way the community benefits, the police service benefits, and the cadet benefits as well. But I don't know that it's not a bad idea for us to begin implementing, pairing them up with a community member that supports them in braiding in new initiatives and different ideas as to, you know, how to start reconciliation, implement something that's, we have a list of them,
Yep.
right? And I'm again not saying that no agency is doing that, no police service is doing it. I'm just saying we could be better.
I like that approach to it as well, that it's not that what you guys are doing right now is wrong. You're doing what has been mandated by the provincial government and you're doing what has been done in the past, but there's no reason that things can't be updated. Things can't, evolve over time and maybe, like we said before, add some more support to the community members who might be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you summarize that too, because, you know, out of all the wonderful things being done by a lot of our police services, I can say that collectively we are shifting and we're being responsive to community needs and requests. We're doing that. And we see that through Orange Shirt Day, through, you know, our officers wearing ribbon skirts and ribbon vests for the male officers, and prayers before meetings, including elders in important events, community naming our buildings, the rooms within our offices, or our rooms within our service.
Yep.
I was speaking recently with the chief of police of Prince Albert, Patrick Nogier. He reflected about the importance of bringing community and officers together that are at odds or finding alternative ways to solve problems. And I'll let him tell the story one day to you, but it was very impactful and very touching. And it gave me an idea on something that we need to be better on and implement here. So can we be better? Absolutely. And can we learn from one another? You know, I think we'll always learn from one another as we gain traction in a community voice. I think that between agencies, there is a constant reminder that we have to be, you know, we can sharing our best practices, really.
I think there's nothing better than being able to share lessons learned maybe that you guys have found with other police services who might be listening in and they might be able to take it back to their police service. So I'm wondering if the Tsuut'ina Police Service has had any successful initiatives that have led to the promotion of the policing profession in Indigenous communities. That sounded like a mouthful, but that's what I'm hoping for.
You nailed it, girl. Okay, I would say a couple things that we did in Tsuut'ina is that we hired 2 community artists to come in and paint our cell block, our
Oh, wow.
individual cell block area to reflect community. And when I started at the beginning and I talked to you about moments of impact, I pictured being like this scared kid, or what if it was my kid? Or, imagine being transported, incarcerated, and waking up and not knowing where you are, and just these white walls.
Right.
And it's scary. And when you think about now, when they wake up, they have a sense of, okay, there's this beautiful art. It is a conversation piece. It has a calming effect. And it's a reminder, yeah, you're in jail, but you're in a really nice one. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. But, it is a calming effect, but it gave the opportunity for artists to really reflect what they wanted to put on the walls and what they wanted to reflect to their community and about their community for people that are transported here that aren't from here.
Yeah.
A sense of pride, right? And it's like a lot of people might think, well, why would you paint that for clients that maybe aren't, in like your most favorable clients?
Right.
But that's our community.
Yeah.
That's bad decisions, good decisions, we all make them. And that was one example. And that's been effective. Just make sure you put a nice lacquer over top of it so they can't deface it, because that was a learning lesson.
That's a pro tip right there.
There's a pro tip, yeah. And then we hired a local artist, an elder, actually. We didn't like the standard look of our police vehicles. So we needed a look that represented this community and something that resonated with this community, and something that definitely made us different than neighboring communities, neighboring police agencies. So we did that as well, which was nice. It was a huge hit. And thank you for the acknowledgement, or to your team for recognizing us as being one of the best dressed vehicles. So
I was going to say, I recognize those vehicles. I remember
yeah,
seeing those this year.
yeah. So we were happy about that. And so is our elder and community. So thank you. And then another thing is that we hired a local community artist to design our walls within our building, to take a collection of photographs of the previous Tsuut'ina before us. Now, the word Tsuut'ina means Black soldiers to the Tsuut'ina people, which means they were the protectors of the tribe before we came along. Like I
Oh,
mentioned at the beginning, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. And, it was interesting because it was their opportunity to tell the story in our training room and throughout our walls by donning the portraits of those that came before us and those shoulders that we stand upon today, to show that we acknowledge you, we appreciate you, and we're trying to keep our best to carry on your tradition and protecting your tribe. We may not all be from here, but we all certainly have a collective passion, which is to protect this community. And then lastly, we've recently designed a mentorship program for our female staff to get engaged with female community members to encourage job shadowing for civilian and sworn police officers, to do ride-alongs, get an active joint gym membership together to get them to that level of physical fitness. If they decide to drop off, there's no obligation, but the idea is exposure. The idea is come and see what's inside of our walls. Come and see. You don't have to be an applicant. You don't have to be committed to doing anything. It could be, at the end of the day, just a good positive role model mentorship in your life. And yeah, right now, those are the things that we've got.
that's incredible. I love the sound of the mentorship program. And like you said, there's no obligation. They don't already have to be in the application process. And that, I think, will also go a long way to just bringing up the police in the community's eyes, like we were talking about earlier in the podcast. I think that's a fantastic idea. And to your comment earlier about you may not all be from that community originally, but you're part of it now. So you're very invested in it, I assume. And I assume that the community has been welcoming to new members, hoping.
They are, and that's one of their things, is that they're fine with new people coming to the community to police it, but the police officers have to take the time to get to know the community members by first
Right.
name, right? They want to know who you are.
Yep.
They want, and like let's think for a second. We get that there's a dispatch system that we all have to follow for safety, for police officer safety, public safety, and there's a list of questions that dispatch it's necessary for them to go through those series of questions.
Hmm.
But in First Nations policing, I'll be honest, is that a lot of those phone calls end up becoming text messages and phone calls in the middle of the night to say, here's what's happening.
Right.
And at first, some people that are new to an Indigenous community may think, oh my God, like go through the process. But it's a sign of trust.
Yeah.
It's not the ideal process. But it is a sign of trust to say, I trust that you're hearing my call. I trust that you are recognizing I need help.
Yeah.
And because we expect people to adhere to our policing styles, there's a lot of things in our policing world that are very difficult to navigate.
Yep.
Dispatch, sitting on the phone for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. You know, when it's a crisis happening in your life, it could be your first crisis, could be your 50th, could be life or death. But the point is they felt comfortable enough to call you directly. And again, I'm not promoting it to say that it's a great remedy, but recognize what the message is. It's not just they're reaching out to you as the easy button. They're reaching out to you because you've made an impact.
Of course. How big is the community, may I ask?
The community itself is just over 2,500 residents.
Okay.
Our visitor population with our newly developed areas is over 90,000 motorists coming and going
Wow.
to visit, the developed areas, the Costco and the other businesses outside. And it's only going to grow larger.
That's incredible. And like you said, they're very welcoming to you guys as it is. And once you guys build that trust, it's a great system you guys have going there. Now, in a perfect world, I know we don't live in one, but in a perfect world, in addition to what we've already talked about, is there anything that you would like to see in the future when it comes to recruiting efforts, either just across Canada as it is, or specifically for Indigenous policing?
I would say, don't be afraid to change the process. I recognize for standards, we can only deviate so much. I understand that. Everybody understands that. And that's sometimes I think where we get locked into our thinking, right? And we hit a ceiling. Oh, you can't do that because policy, blah, 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 blah. But I think that our previous style was designed to attract a certain type of person. And I think that we have a larger, more diversified audience now and a history that's surfaced that we can't afford to do policing without changing our style. We have to expand our thinking, and we can't be afraid to change and modify it. It's what used to work, I guess. But yeah.
And of course, Blue Line's audience is mainly police officers who are already in the profession. But if someone's watching this right now and is considering a career as a police officer, what would you want to say to them? What advice would you share?
Well, that's easy. Okay, so First Nations policing is where it's at. I'm just going to say that. With 36 self-administered First Nations police services across Canada, we're all hiring. I have to say that. I got to take this platform.
Of course, we're talking about recruiting, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not viewed as an essential service yet, but we've been told for over 20 years that that's being considered and that's coming. But we're damn good, and we're good at what we do. We recognize what community needs are. We recognize what community wants, and we're flexible enough in our processes and policies that we can adapt those in short order. The chiefs of police and the visions in the chiefs of police of the standalones across Canada, I'm very fortunate to be able to meet with a lot of them and discuss and pick their brain about a lot of different topics. And they're very innovative and creative and honestly navigating waters daily to find ways in order for them to be better and attract the clientele that they're seeking. And that's community. So yeah, I'd say service to community has to be something that's in your heart. Service to community is looking out for the neighbor, keeping a watchful eye on the youth. Service to community is cooking and caring for those that are grieving, celebrating. And the thing is that the women in our community have always been doing it. They've always been the protectors of their tribe, and service to community is not a uniform, it's a way of living. So I would leave it at that.
That was perfect, Dawn-Lyn. I'm so happy that we got to discuss this today, and I had a lot of fun. I'm hoping you had a lot of fun as well. And I'm hoping that if someone is listening right now who does want to be a police officer or is considering it, reach out. I feel like you guys would love to talk about it as well. And I feel like most people are open to talking about their policing careers. So, I'm glad I had you here today, and thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Let's do it again. I love this.
I'm down.
For everyone else who tuned in today, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of Blue Line, the podcast. You can check us out on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your podcasts. You can also stay up to date on all of your Canadian policing news at blueline.ca. Until next time, stay safe and be well.